Hey there. Ready to dive into something kind of wild? We're going deep on spinors today.
There are these mathematical objects that are, well, pretty fundamental to physics.
But can be a little mind-bending at first glance.
Oh, yeah, definitely mind-bending.
You sent us a whole bunch of stuff, articles, research papers.
Even a YouTube video.
Yeah, titled The Mystery of Spinors. It seems like you're really trying to get a grip on this.
And that's where we come in.
Exactly.
Think of this deep dive as your guide through the spinor landscape.
We'll point out the landmarks.
Make those tricky concepts click.
And hopefully, you'll walk away with some solid aha moments.
That's the goal.
All right, so let's see what we're working with here. We've got excerpts from Ely Cartan's The Theory of Spinors.
Classic.
Some research papers that get into some pretty advanced spinor concepts. And of course, that intriguing YouTube video. You're really covering all the bases.
It seems like you want to build a really strong understanding of spinors.
Yeah.
Starting from the ground up.
Right, from the basics.
And working our way to those complex mathematical workings. We'll make sure to connect all the dots between your sources.
Perfect. Let's start with that YouTube video then.
Okay.
It actually explains spinors in a pretty intuitive way. It says spinors are kind of like vectors,
Okay.
but with a twist.
Literally.
Instead of rotating back to their original position after one full turn, spinors need 2 rotations to get back to where they started.
Yeah, it's a great visual, and it highlights the most fundamental difference between spinors and vectors. This whole double rotation thing is mathematically tied to the idea of a double cover.
Okay.
Which you've probably come across in Cartan's book and the research papers.
Yeah, I saw that term, but it was a bit over my head. Something about a group called SU2 being a double cover of another group, SO3.
Right. Let me break it down. Imagine SO3 as the group containing all possible rotations in 3D space.
Okay.
SU2 is a different kind of group, but each rotation in SO3 corresponds to 2 elements in SU2. It's like SU2 has this secret, more intricate layer that regular rotations in SO3 don't fully reveal.
So it's like SU2 is pulling the strings behind the scene.
Exactly.
And we only see the simplified version of rotations with SO3.
Exactly. Spinors operate within this richer SU2 world, giving them their unique properties.
Now, the research papers you sent mentioned some big names in physics.
Oh, yeah.
Dirac, Wigner, Weil, and Fock.
The pioneers.
They were all involved in the early development of spinor mathematics, right?
That's right. Their work was absolutely pivotal in laying the foundation for our modern understanding of spinors. Dirac especially made groundbreaking contributions. His famous equation describing electrons in a relativistic setting fundamentally relies on the concept of spinors.
That's the Dirac equation, right?
Yep.
One of the pillars of quantum mechanics.
Absolutely.
It combines quantum mechanics and Einstein's special relativity.
You got it. And it wouldn't have been possible without spinors. It really highlights how deeply spinors are embedded in the fabric of our universe.
Okay, back to that YouTube video for a sec. It mentioned simply connected spaces.
Right.
That sounded like it was related to rotations.
It is.
But I didn't quite follow.
So, okay, think of it this way. If you have a loop in a space, and you can shrink it down to a point without leaving that space, that space is simply connected. Now, picture representing rotations with an axis and an angle.
So the axis tells you the direction of the spin.
Yes.
And the angle tells you how much you're rotating it, like how we describe the Earth's rotation.
Precisely. If you map all possible rotations this way, you get a 3D space where each point is a specific rotation. But here's the catch. This space is not simply connected.
Okay.
Some loops of rotations can't be shrunk to a point. This is where that double cover idea comes back. SU2 actually is simply connected, and it provides a complete picture of the space of rotations.
So we're seeing that rotations, the way we usually think of them, are just one part of a bigger, more intricate picture.
Absolutely.
And that bigger picture is revealed by SU2.
Right. And as we go deeper into the mathematical foundations of spinors, you'll see how they capture this deeper structure.
Speaking of math, Cartan's book and the research papers dive into some pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Clifford algebras, minimal ideals.
It can sound intimidating, but it's really the backbone of understanding how spinors work mathematically.
Okay.
Clifford algebras, for example, are a way of extending regular addition and multiplication to include vectors and other geometric objects.
So it's like inventing new math specifically to work with rotations and transformations.
Exactly. Now, within Clifford algebras, you have these special substructures called minimal ideals.
Okay.
They are like the building blocks from which we construct spinors mathematically. Cartan's book beautifully outlines this whole process.
Okay, I'm starting to see the structure here.
Good.
But it's still pretty abstract.
Yeah.
We get a bit more concrete. What's an example of how all this plays out?
Absolutely. Let's talk about two important types of spinors. Dirac and Weyl spinors.
Yeah.
You've probably encountered them in the research papers. Imagine you have a 4D space representing space-time. 3 dimensions for space, 1 for time. We can build Clifford algebras within this 4D space. The elements of the minimal ideals within these algebras are what we call Dirac spinors.
So Dirac spinors are like specific points within this Clifford algebra built upon spacetime.
Exactly. And due to this structure, Dirac spinors have 4 components. The research papers use a specific notation to represent these components, often using Greek letters with indices.
Right.
Don't get bogged down by the notation. It's just a way to keep track of the components and their transformations.
Got it. Now, what about Weyl spinors?
Okay.
How do they fit into this picture?
Weyl spinors are also built within this 4D Clifford algebra, but they're a bit more specialized. You can think of a Dirac spinor as being made of 2 Weyl spinors. There's like the left-handed and right-handed versions of a spinor.
Interesting. So we have these different flavors of spinors,
We do.
all living within this abstract world of Clifford algebras.
That's right.
Now, Cartan's book also mentions contravariant and covariant components of spinors.
Yes.
What's that all about?
Think of contravariant components as describing how a spinor changes as you change your coordinate system, like shifting your perspective in space-time.
Okay.
Covariant components, on the other hand, describe how the components transform when you change the basis of your spinor space. It's like switching the language you're using to describe the same spinor.
So it's about having different viewpoints,
Yes.
both within space-time and within the spinor space itself.
Precisely. And understanding how these components transform ensures that our physical laws involving spinors remain consistent regardless of our chosen perspective.
The laws of physics shouldn't depend on how we choose to look at things, right?
Exactly. And spinors, with their complex transformation properties, play a crucial role in upholding this principle.
Okay, we've explored the basics of what spinors are and how they're defined mathematically. But you've also got material on how spinors work in 3 dimensions.
Right.
That's the space we're most familiar with, after all.
Yes, and Cartan really shines here. He shows how to represent rotations in 3D using spinors in a really elegant way.
Okay.
Instead of those clunky rotation matrices, he builds these linear representations of rotations using spinors.
So spinors give us a more streamlined way to think about rotations in 3D.
Exactly. And in doing so, Cartan reveals a deep connection between spinors and infinitesimal rotations.
Infinitesimal rotations. What are those?
Imagine taking a tiny rotation so small it's almost imperceptible. These infinitesimal rotations are like the building blocks of all rotations. Cartan shows how to use spinors to analyze these infinitesimal rotations and then use that to figure out something called Euclidean tensors.
Okay. I'm starting to feel like I need a math degree to follow along here.
Yeah.
What are Euclidean tensors and why should I care?
Think of Euclidean tensors as describing quantities that don't change when you rotate things, like distances, areas, or volumes.
So they're like the constants of the rotation world. They stay the same even if everything else is spinning around.
Exactly. And the cool part is that by looking at those infinitesimal rotations through the lens of spinors, Cartan gives us a way to systematically figure out what those Euclidean tensors are.
It's like spinors reveal this hidden structure in the world of rotations.
Yes.
Bringing order to what seems chaotic.
That's a great way to put it. Now, one more thing Cartan gets into is the difference between single-valued and double-valued representations of rotations. It's a bit of a head-scratcher, but it's key to understanding how spinors behave.
All right, lay it on me. What are these single and double-valued representations all about?
Let's think about a spinning top.
Yeah.
If you spin it 360 degrees, it seems to be back in its original position, right?
Yeah, one full rotation brings it back to the start. Pretty straightforward.
Now imagine a ribbon attached to the top, twisting as the top spins. If you spin the top 360 degrees, the ribbon will be twisted. You need to spin it another 360 degrees, a total of 720 degrees, for the ribbon to untwist and return to its original state.
I've seen that before. It's weird, but it made sense.
That's the core of the difference between those representations. The top itself, after one rotation, is back where it started. That's single-valued. But the ribbon needs 2 rotations. That's double-valued.
Ah, so the ribbon is like a spinor,
Yes.
needing 2 rotations to get back to its starting point.
Huh?
While the top is like a regular vector, only needing 1.
Precisely. This double-valued nature of spinors has huge implications in physics.
Okay.
It's what leads to the strange and fascinating behavior of particles like electrons and their inherent spin.
Whoa, we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from spinors needing 2 rotations to get back to their starting point, to Clifford algebras, Dirac, and Weil spinors. Wow. And even touched on the concept of simply connected spaces. My head is spinning a little bit, but I'm starting to see how spinors are much more than just these abstract mathematical objects.
They really are, and we're just getting started.
I think I need a moment to process all this. Maybe we can continue our spinor exploration in the next part.
Absolutely. We'll pick up where we left off and dive into some of the fascinating ways spinors impact our understanding of the universe. Welcome back.
Definitely.
Ready to continue our spinor journey?
Yeah, though I have to admit my brain's still buzzing from all those concepts we explored last time.
I bet.
Clifford algebras, double covers.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's not light material, but once you grasp these fundamentals, it opens up a whole new level of understanding about how the universe works.
I'm starting to see that. It's like spinors are a hidden language of the cosmos, and we're just beginning to decode it.
I like that. A great way to put it. And remember, we're here to guide you through it. So where would you like to go next? We could delve deeper into Cartan's work on spinors in 3 dimensions. Or perhaps jump into some of the applications in physics.
Let's stick with Cartan for now.
Okay.
I'm curious to see how he uses spinors to understand those rotations we talked about earlier.
Excellent choice. Cartan's approach is really quite elegant. He shows how to represent rotations in 3D using spinors. But instead of using those bulky rotation matrices we're used to, he constructs these linear representations of rotations using spinors and their transformations.
So it's like he found a more streamlined, elegant way to describe how things rotate in 3D space.
Exactly.
Kind of like finding a shortcut through a dense forest.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like translating a complex piece of music from a clunky instrument to a beautifully refined one.
Okay.
The melody remains the same, but the expression becomes much richer, more nuanced.
I like that.
Yeah.
So how do spinors achieve this more elegant representation? What's the secret ingredient?
It all comes down to how spinors transform under rotations.
Right.
Remember that double rotation property?
Yeah.
Where spinors need to rotate twice to return to their original state?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Cartan leverages that property to build a system where spinor transformations directly correspond to rotations in 3D space.
I see. So he's using that unique spinor characteristic to create a whole new way to represent rotations.
Yeah.
But why go through all that trouble? Why not just stick with those traditional rotation matrices?
Because Cartan's method connects rotations to the concept of those tiny, almost imperceptible rotations we talked about, the infinitesimal rotations.
Right.
By analyzing them, we gain a deeper understanding of how rotations work at their most fundamental level.
Right. Infinitesimal rotations. They're like the building blocks of all rotations.
Exactly.
But how do spinors help us analyze them? What's the connection there?
Cartan demonstrates that these infinitesimal rotations can be represented by certain combinations of spinor components and their derivatives. It gets a bit technical, but the takeaway is that spinors provide a natural framework for analyzing these infinitesimal rotations.
So spinors are like a special lens.
Yes.
That allows us to break down rotations into their tiniest parts.
Precisely.
But you mentioned earlier that this leads to determining Euclidean tensors. How does analyzing those infinitesimal rotations with spinors get us to Euclidean tensors?
Remember that Euclidean tensors describe those quantities that stay the same under rotations. Things like distance, area, and volume.
Right, like the constants of the rotation world. They stay put, even if everything else is spinning around.
Exactly. And here's the beauty of it. By analyzing infinitesimal rotations using spinors, Cartan gives us a method to systematically construct and classify these Euclidean tensors.
Yeah.
It's like using spinors as a tool to sift through all the possible geometric objects and identify those that remain unchanged under rotations.
So spinors not only give us a new way to describe rotations,
Right.
but also a way to identify these special unchanging geometric objects.
Precisely. They help us see the underlying structure that governs how rotations work and how they affect different geometric objects. It's like they unveil this hidden order within the seeming chaos of rotations.
I'm following you. This is starting to make more sense now, seeing how spinors bring this elegance and insight to rotations. But we still haven't tackled that distinction between single-valued and double-valued representations of rotations.
Right.
And from what I remember, it's a pretty important concept when it comes to spinors.
It is. It's one of the more peculiar aspects of spinors, but crucial for understanding their behavior. Imagine a spinning top again.
Okay.
We know if you rotate it 360 degrees, it looks like it's back in its original position.
One full rotation, back to the start. Seems simple enough.
Now imagine you attach a ribbon to the top, letting it twist as the top spins.
Okay.
Rotate the top 360 degrees, and that ribbon will end up twisted. You'll need to rotate the top another 360 degrees,
Right.
a total of 720 degrees, for the ribbon to untwist and return to its initial state.
Yeah, I've seen that demonstrated before. It's counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but I get the idea.
That's the essence of the difference between those representations. The top itself, after a single rotation, is back to its original orientation.
Right.
That's a single-valued representation. But the ribbon, after a single rotation, is in a different state.
Right.
You need 2 rotations for it to go back to the start. That's a double-valued representation.
So the ribbon is like a spinor, needing those 2 rotations.
Yes.
Well, the top is like a regular vector,
Exactly.
content with just one.
You got it. And this double-valued nature of spinors is what leads to some of the strange and beautiful behaviors we see in the quantum world, particularly with particles like electrons and their inherent spin.
So this seemingly abstract mathematical concept is actually deeply connected to the way particles behave in the real world.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
Are you ready to see how spinors come alive in physics?
Definitely. I'm eager to see how these mathematical concepts translate into real-world phenomena. Bring on the physics. All right, welcome back to our spinor adventure.
From part 3.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From their quirky double rotation property to Cartan's elegant representations of rotations.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
And we're about to go even deeper.
Yeah.
Remember, spinors aren't just mathematical curiosities.
Right.
They have profound implications for how we understand the universe.
Okay.
Are you ready to see how they shape the world of physics?
Absolutely. Let's dive into those applications.
Okay. Let's start with one of the cornerstones of quantum mechanics.
Okay.
The Pauli exclusion principle.
Right.
This principle states that no 2 identical fermions can occupy the same quantum state simultaneously, like electrons.
So basically, 2 electrons can't be in the exact same state at the same time.
Right.
They need to be different in some way.
Exactly. Now, this principle arises from the spin statistics theorem, which is fundamentally tied to the spin of particles, a property intrinsically linked to spinors.
So spinors are behind this fundamental rule that governs the behavior of matter at its most basic level.
It is.
That's pretty wide.
And remember that YouTube video you sent? It does a great job visually demonstrating this using a multi-particle wave function.
Yeah.
It shows how the spin of particles, represented by spinors, affects the overall symmetry of the wave function, ultimately leading to the exclusion principle.
I remember that part of the video. It was fascinating to see how the wave function, morphed depending on whether the particles were bosons or fermions.
Right.
All thanks to their spin.
And that difference in behavior is directly tied to those spinors we've been talking about. They are the mathematical objects that allow us to represent and understand the spin of particles, which has these enormous consequences for how matter behaves.
So it's like spinors are the secret ingredient that determines whether particles like to huddle together or keep their distance.
You could say that. Now, let's move on to another cornerstone of physics.
Okay.
The Dirac equation.
Right.
Which we touched upon earlier.
Right.
It's considered one of the most beautiful equations in physics.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't exist without spinors.
Okay, remind me, the Dirac equation is all about describing electrons.
Exactly. It describes the behavior of electrons in a relativistic setting.
Okay.
Meaning it takes into account Einstein's special relativity. And it does so with incredible accuracy, thanks to incorporating the concept of spinors.
So we're talking about combining the world of quantum mechanics with Einstein's relativity.
Yes.
All through the magic of spinors.
Precisely. The Dirac equation elegantly captures the essence of how electrons, with their inherent spin, behave at high speeds and energies. It's a testament to the power of spinors to describe the universe at its most fundamental levels.
This is all so mind-blowing. We've seen how spinors shape rotations, underpin a fundamental principle in quantum mechanics, and are essential to one of the most important equations in physics. Where do we even go from here?
Well, your materials actually included some even more advanced topics,
Oh.
like twistors and shear-free ray congruences. These are concepts that push the boundaries of our understanding of space-time and gravity.
Those terms definitely sound intimidating. But my curiosity is piqued. Let's try to tackle them, shall we? What exactly are twistors?
Twistors are fascinating mathematical objects
Okay.
that extend the concept of spinors. They provide a different way of looking at space-time geometry, one that emphasizes the connections between points and lines. Think of them as a way to encode both the position and momentum of a particle in a single object.
So instead of needing separate variables for where a particle is and how it's moving, we can combine that information into a single twistor.
Yeah.
That's pretty efficient.
Exactly. And twistors have some pretty profound connections to physics, especially in general relativity and quantum field theory. They might even hold clues to unifying those two theories, a long sought-after goal in physics.
Wow, a theory of everything. Now that's something I'd like to understand.
Yeah.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, you also mentioned something called shear-free ray congruences. What are those all about?
Imagine shining a bunch of laser pointers perfectly parallel to each other.
Okay.
If those beams of light travel through space without spreading out or distorting, that's what we call a shear-free ray congruence.
So it's like a perfectly aligned beam of light that stays perfectly straight no matter how far it travels.
You got it. And it turns out these shear-free ray congruences have deep connections to those twistors we were just talking about. They play an important role in our understanding of gravitational waves and other aspects of general relativity.
Okay, my brain is starting to melt a little bit here. This is getting pretty deep into the weeds of theoretical physics. But I'm also starting to see how these seemingly abstract mathematical concepts, like spinors and twistors, are actually connected to some of the most fundamental aspects of the universe.
That's the beauty of it. Math provides the tools to explore the universe at its deepest levels. And spinors, with their unique properties and profound connections to physics, are a prime example of that.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. We've gone from spinors needing 2 rotations to return to their starting point, to understanding how they shape the behavior of particles and even warp the fabric of space-time.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, I know.
Spinors are a vast and endlessly fascinating subject. There's always more to explore, more connections to uncover.
It's truly humbling to realize how much there is to learn about the universe.
Yeah.
But thanks to your guidance, I feel like I've gained a solid grasp of what spinors are.
Good.
And why they matter.
And remember, the journey of discovery never truly ends. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows what other amazing concepts you'll uncover along the way.
I'm definitely inspired to keep learning. And for all of you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of spinors. We'll see you next time for another adventure in knowledge and discovery.